Welcome to Music Student 101. Continuing from the previous episode, it's time to say everything else we need to say about reading music. We'll do our best to describe some of these signs and symbols, but check out our website, musicstudent101.com, to get a better look at them. And now here are your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Jeremy, what's up?
How do you make a bandstand?
How do I make a bandstand? I don't know.
You take away their chairs. That came from our new friend Rachel from Colorado, an 18-year-old who is no stranger to dad jokes, apparently, who we will hear from in a bit.
Excellent.
And how have you been, man?
I've been doing good. Well, we are in the middle of another semester, busy one this time, so things are rocking and rolling. Teaching theory this time, teaching world music this time, ear training. It's been fun.
You have had brownies in your life recently?
I have had brownies in my life recently.
And now you bring the brownies to my life?
And now we bring brownies to my friends.
I thank you for that, and I thank Fran.
She wanted you to know she put some love in them.
That's awesome.
So
very cool. Right on. Well, let's see here. Here's what's up.
Here's what's up.
Halfway through the previous episode.
Which I recall doing, I think.
I think about a month ago.
Right.
I think you said, have we talked about clef symbols yet?
Right.
And I hadn't had a chance to go back and listen to every episode and find where we did. And so I'm not 100% sure. So
I'm not 100% sure we did.
So halfway through that episode, I was like, oh, we should have done this other episode, part 2 as part 1.
Yeah, probably. Because we did an episode, Stuff You See on the Score.
Yes.
But a lot of that episode was kind of like the more intricate, detailed, you might run into this kind of stuff you see on the score. I don't know that we ever did just basic, like how to read music.
Maybe the kind of thing we should have done, like maybe 10 episodes in or something like that.
So yeah, and didn't.
But hey, that's part of 108 episodes in. I guess that's part of, especially with our nature of doing part 1 over here and part 2 way over here. And
right. Yeah.
The cliffhanger effect. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's a testament to how much there is to learn about music. Right. That even 108 episodes in, it's like, well, we never discussed this, and we've got to go back and. I mean, that's how much information you're dealing with as a musician.
Indeed. And I am as a producer and writer, and I'm going to miss a few things. But I always aim to bring them back at some point. And if you're just Googling reading music, then maybe part 1 would have come up, and you got all these in one-stop shopping all together consecutively. And hopefully you'll gain something from it.
Hopefully so. And, sometimes it is, even if we have mentioned them in passing before, sometimes it is pedagogically beneficial, I think, to sort of repackage them so some things that were not packaged together get packaged together. That can be helpful.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Okay, let's do that.
Well, we got some good news here, man. We got a new review.
Excellent.
We have 5 stars from Rick Hood.
All right. So Rick says, Jeremy and Matthew are a pleasure to listen to, and the content is extensive and enjoyable, with very good explanations and examples. Thank you, Rick. Mm-hmm. We try. There are plenty of other podcasts and YouTube channels that do a good job diving into certain topics, but none are as extensive as this one is. If you listen to and understand all the episodes, you will know a lot about music. Probably more than you will ever need to know. Probably so.
Is that possible?
I mean, need is different from want.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Need is different from want. Need to know, want to know, hey.
That's why we're still kicking.
And Rick continues, also, the website is very clear and to the point. I do website development for a living, and it is refreshing to see a site focused on giving you information without bells and whistles that can just get in the way. Great job, Jeremy and Matthew, and great job, Jeremy, on the website. That is totally Jeremy.
Oh, yeah, I don't know how to do bells and whistles, so Rick, I might have to reach out to you about some design ideas.
I've said this before. I feel bad. All I really do is show up and run my mouth. Really, the show is Jeremy's blood, sweat, and tears, as exemplified by the website. But and he says, and thank you for all the work you put into this. Oh, thank you, Rick. That it is always refreshing to know, to feel like we're doing a good job. We love those 5-star reviews. Mm-hmm. Keep them coming our way. They help our visibility, which is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Get us to other aspiring musicians who want to know more about music theory and other musical subjects. So.
And ego trips aside, it also makes Matt and I kind of want to do this more, knowing that we're helping people out.
Right, yeah, which is ultimately why we do this, right? So there you go.
And Rick, I believe, didn't stop at that. I received notification that a Richard Hood joined us on Patreon just a few days ago.
Wonderful.
So if this is the same Rick Hood as Richard Hood, and I don't want to speak too soon, but either way, I'll be reaching out to you.
Right, yeah.
Very soon.
Thank you, Richard Hood, who might also be Rick Hood.
Yeah.
And if others of you want to support us on Patreon, we very much appreciate that. That Patreon site is what again?
Oh, it's just patreon.com/musicstudent101.
Right, and you can contribute $1
a month. Yes. It's like a subscription thing. You can do $1 a month for access to the page and the site and all the cool videos and extra
we
episodes.
get full extra little videos. You get to see Jeremy playing some of the podcast intro music and things live on video, and
with my trusty Area 47 band.
Yes, and then at $3 you get thermoses now.
Yes. What was the coffee mug is now a kind of big old tall sippy what do you call it? Vacuum sealed.
Big tall
tumbler.
Thermos kind of tumbler. Yeah, there you go. Into which you can put coffee if you so desire.
Yep.
With the Music Student 101 logo on it. And for $5.
For $5 you can request a special episode.
Yes, and we will spend no less than 15 minutes talking about your music theory question specifically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we need to put out more of those, so y'all speak up.
Absolutely.
You perfect fifth members.
Bring us your questions, and we will get a Patreon-only 15-minute mini episode that addresses your specific question.
And speaking of Patreon...
Sean Murphy from Winchester, Virginia is a new Patreon patron. Mm-hmm. And Sean says, hey, gents, I've really enjoyed the podcast and have learned a lot. Thanks again for the valuable work. Short and sweet. I love it.
And Sean is actually also a perfect fifth member, and he already knows his question, Matt. It revolves around Silent Night.
Ah, the timeless Christmas carol.
Yes. We won't read his entire question about that, but I'll let you know that we're not going to make him wait till Christmas.
Oh, good.
In fact, I'm going to say March. I'm going to go ahead and say it. There, I said it. That means I have to do it.
Excellent. And now we have to do it. Excellent. I can't wait to talk about Silent Night for at least 15 minutes.
So, thank you, Sean, from Winchester.
Thank you, Sean.
And we will be in touch.
Indeed.
Now, we don't really mention this a lot, and we really should mention it more often. I don't like to spend too much time on the social part, so we can get to the theory and everything.
Because we've had helpful suggestions that we talk too much about.
We have. But this is a big thank you, basically.
Yeah.
And we have a PayPal donator, a donation from PayPal, which you can also do one-time donations.
Right.
You can do that through the website.
Yes.
You can find that on the donation page, or help us, or whatever I called it. The web designer that I am. There's a way to do that. And Al Day is from Cheltenham, England.
Cheltenham.
It's spelt Cheltenham, but I'm going to go ahead and Englandize it.
Cheltenham.
Because I know Birmingham is Birmingham.
Right.
So I'm going to say Cheltenham, England.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
And Al says, hey guys, I chipped in to keep your lights on.
We appreciate it.
And coffee too, right?
Yeah, lights, coffee. Yeah.
The essentials.
All the things we need to do this podcast.
Power to record with.
Power, yeah. Production, yeah.
So he says, by far the best music podcast on the web. Keep up the great work. Thank you. I have learned so much about the world of music since listening to your podcasts. Up to number 25 so far.
Oh, excellent.
Cheers, says Al. Al adds a P.S. I can't work out Jeremy's accent. It sounds as though one of his parents was an English aristocrat. Very posh.
Very posh.
Well, that's, I can't seem to work out my own accent. I'm not sure. My dad drove trains. He was an engineer.
Oh, wow.
And my mom was a histotech. They're both retired now. So I would say I came from a middle-class family.
Excellent. Wow.
So maybe we're just posh by genetics.
Maybe just posh by genetics or enculturation or something. My accent is very easy. I'm very, very Southern USA. Nobody's going to mistake me from being anywhere else. I don't think.
No. Well, there's some thicker Southerners out there, man.
There's thicker Southerners than me, yeah. So if you think I have a thick Southern accent, you've heard nothing. Believe me. I've got relatives that you're not sure they're even speaking a language, much less the English language.
Right. But anyways, thanks, Al. We appreciate it. Thanks for your PayPal donation, and we shall move on, shall we?
Yes, let's move on.
Okay. So moving on, we have ourselves a new listener mail.
Listener mail, yes.
Yeah, Matt, you want to hit us?
Yeah. So Rachel from Colorado writes, I just recently turned 18, but I've been listening to you guys for a few months, and for a while before that, I've been looking into music education as a career.
Woohoo!
Excellent. We need more music educators. We do. I've been involved in music for as long as I can remember, being a vocalist for a little over 10 years, playing the piano for a bit over 7, and teaching myself different instruments, for example, the ukulele, bass, guitar, tenor sax, and just a little bit of drums. Very eclectic.
Nice. Got your hands busy.
Yeah. Recently, however, I've been composing more pieces of choral music. Oh, nice. Since that's the kind of music I've been most exposed to theory and technique-wise. But I've run into a bit of difficulties in the process that I thought you guys could probably help with.
Well, I think this is a good opportunity to share some of our listeners' woes with other listeners in case they are having that kind of problem.
Absolutely. And I intend to write Rachel back at some point. I just got this recently, so but to touch on her questions briefly. So question 1. For writing SATB, which is a soprano, alto, tenor, bass, typical 4-part choir, right? How would you recommend keeping everything in accordance to the plot or a theme of the song while not getting everything all jumbled up? For example, I lean towards SSA, 2 sopranos and altos music, because I can go through each part and isolate it in my head to sing. I can't do that with bass, and I'm not the best with doing that in the tenor range. Side note, some of my other composer friends have suggested writing an alto line and then just putting it on bass clef for the basses, or having an emotional support bass to sing or sight read whatever I write before I set it in concrete. So
everything's going to be okay.
Everything's going to be okay, Rachel. We will help. So
that was just my emotional support bass.
The plot. So the plot or the theme of the song. If you have a theme, something that you consider a leitmotif or a melodic kernel that is keeping the thing together, it should happen. These are very, very general rules, but they typically happen in every voice at some point, right? So think about that. Think about what other voice I could put it in. Think about what kind of things you could do with any given theme.
So you're saying themes or hooks, so to speak,
right? Cool
moments that are memorable moments.
Yep,
should happen in all the voices. Or
yeah, and I hate general rules like that, because then you're going to go, oh well, I've got to put this in every voice at some point. Not necessarily, but if you're thinking about what to do, that is one good thing. Another good thing is to think to sort of think about the implications of your theme. If you take a theme, I don't know, I'll just make one up. Right? Yeah. So, you can harmonize it in different ways. So, like, for example, and that's just 1 and 5. That's basic, Or what if you did at some point? And just those two notes, you know?
Yeah.
And then, and then moved up instead of down, you know? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So think of ways you can sort of morph your theme to kind of keep it fresh and still recognizable.
Same
right?
theme, but experimenting with different harmonies in some cases. Huh?
Experimenting with different harmonies, experimenting with different kernels of that theme and focusing on those. And
Rhythms.
yeah, all of this comes with practice, experience, and patience.
Yes.
Right? Composition is a skill, just like playing an instrument. And it takes practice and doing things a little bit better next time, you know, for the rest of your life.
Probably some moments of upset.
Yeah. As far as writing for bass, it is true that the bass voice tends to be a little different in terms of, you know, sort of the type of melodic contour it has. So I had a professor once tell me that the bass voice moves by leap in the same way the other voices move by step. Particularly when the bass leaps is where you feel like you have moved forward in the harmony. Right? So if I, for example, kind of go, here's my bass voice. Actually, I'll put it down there.
There we go.
And if I, you know, and then what? What am I doing? Hear how we kind of felt like we had gone somewhere significant when that voice leapt right there between those last two chords, right? That was a imperfect, authentic cadence, actually. So you know, as long as the bass is moving by step, you're kind of in a sort of sense of suspended animation.
Because before that, I was just walking down.
Right? Yeah, just walking down, but via inversion, right? Which is inversions exist to create cool bass lines.
Totally.
And, you know, when the bass starts to leap, that's when you feel like you've really jumped somewhere. You know, and it feels like you really moved to the next part of the, you know, you've either finished that phrase or you've moved to the next part of the phrase. So, you know, write an alto line and just put it in bass clef. I don't know. I would be more inclined to, you know, think about the root of the chords you're writing. You know, and, you know, I mean, the easiest thing to do is, you know, just jump around playing the root of whatever chord in the bass line. Do that, and then go back and think, okay, where can I do something other than just the root of this chord to make it sound cool?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, my personal rule is I start with the root, then I go to the 5, then I go to the 3.
There you go. Her second question, what are some red flags in composing or arranging music that a lot of newbies like myself get wrong? How would you remedy that? Oh, Rachel.
There's lots of red flags. I mean,
without seeing someone's music and working with them, you know, it can be hard to generalize. Really, it's a very, very individual thing. Writing music and composing music is you know, it's very much your thing. Combine that with the fact that there's not really right and wrong ways to do anything ultimately, and it can be hard to say everybody messes this up and I wish they wouldn't. You know, that's not really a thing.
it makes it sound like crap.
Yeah, it makes it sound like don't do parallel fifths, right?
That's what I brought up to her, actually.
Yeah.
In my response.
Unless you want to write parallel fifths. I mean,
power chords, man.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I would say the thing that I see a lot of beginning composers doing that I think everybody kind of grows out of is the idea that there should be a maximum number of ideas in their music. So they have this tendency to, you know, sit down to write, and I'm going to write with this idea, and then, okay, well, that's enough writing for today. I'm going to get up and, you know, come back tomorrow or next week or whatever, sit down and have a whole bunch of new ideas and just tag that on to the end of the ideas we had from before, right? And tag ideas on so that your final composition kind of becomes idea. You know, what we grow out of, and I'm not saying don't do this. I mean, I think this is kind of a part of learning the craft. What we do grow out of is that idea of idea, and grow kind of more into let's work with this idea for this amount of time. let's get as much out of a single idea as we can before we move to the next one. And the more we try to do that, the more we find that we can actually milk ideas, for a long time. Right?
More focus on individual ideas rather than trying to stack a whole bunch together.
Right. Yeah. Right. Think about Beethoven. It's just 3 notes.
Yes.
But then he went, right? Right, and then on and on with those 3 notes, right?
Yeah.
Milking that idea before he goes on to any other idea, right? In fact, he milked that idea into an entire symphony. So that's the big thing that comes to my mind, and I'm not, and like I said, I don't necessarily say avoid doing that. I think it's just something you kind of grow into, Most beginning composition students I see, they've got 2 pages of music and they don't know what to do for the next page. And, I could create like 3 sonatas out of that 2 pages of music, right? So don't worry about, what you're going to do in the 3rd page, worry about stretching this out. And you'll have more music than you can even handle.
You've got the themes, just develop them, tweak them, vary them.
Right, tweak them, vary them. And, what specifically do I mean when I say that? Well, again, it just depends. It can be all about context. Beethoven transposed and inverted those 3 notes ad infinitum.
Different keys.
Yeah, a lot of people have a tendency to go straight to what they think their main idea is. If you're writing, I've got an organ patch today, so if you're writing an organ patch, they'll right, and that's their main idea, and that idea occurs in measure 1. That was Bach, Little Fugue in G minor, by the way. So it's Bach's idea, but let's just, for the sake of, and I find myself telling people a lot, slow down. 2, 3, 4, 2, right? See how much more impact that had when it came in that time? Because you were giving yourself a chance to live in a world before it came in.
Yeah. Setting the atmosphere, the setting.
Yeah, and this is what I mean when I say milking, something.
It's okay to take some time with your music. It's okay not to rush into the next thing.
Right, yeah. Always be cognizant of how someone sitting here listening is going to feel. Because, they're not counting. The audience is not sitting there with the score in their hand. Usually. Hope not.
Hope not.
Right? So, always be cognizant of how they're going to feel.
Right on.
Right? Don't worry as much about filling up space as you are, creating that experience. So that's as good as I can do.
Well, cool. Well, she has one more here that kind of is going to segue into the episode.
All right.
So
awesome.
We might as well go ahead and hit that.
Yeah, let's do that. So her 3rd question, what are some ways you would explain counting rhythms in numbers as opposed to syllables or skipping between those 2? As someone who isn't the best with numbers and prefers words, syllables, and the feel over almost everything else, it's difficult for me to get rhythms that subdivide in a certain way and such. What are some exercises or just overall advice you would give to someone in the situation? Well, my first bit of advice is practice. If you do choose to go into music education and go to college for this, you will be given the opportunity, the obligation to practice counting rhythms. There are ear training exercises in ear training classes that are nothing but rhythms. So you'll be drilled on rhythms. Some of those exercises, they basically involve counting. So if I assume 4/4, I will practice conducting quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice and slow.
When you say conducting, are you doing your hands while you're doing this?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. In the 4 pattern. You can tap your foot or nod your head or whatever, but the pattern really sets the 4 in. right?
It's like you're doing the sign of the cross to somebody who's standing across from you.
Yeah, down,
left, right.
left, across the body, away from the body.
Yeah.
And so down, across, away, up. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Right, that basic.
So
And
you're involving physical movement to your counting.
rhythm is a thing of the body. Mm-hmm. It's not really so much an intellectual concept as it is a feel. So you're ahead of the game with that. So, but yeah, I practice that, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are quarter notes. 2, 3, 4. I can take my quarter notes and then do eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So 2 notes every beat, right? Every swing of my hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Take each of those 2 notes and divide them again to have 16th notes. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And then I used to like to just make stuff up.
Okay.
Like,
this might be what she was talking
Yeah,
about.
like 1, 2, and a 3 E and a 4, and a 1, and a 2, and 3, and 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, and 4.
Okay, so just changing the rhythm patterns.
I'm just improvising.
Yeah, riffing on it.
Yeah, I used to walk around in downtown Birmingham, Alabama, doing that. People must have thought I was crazy, but it worked, right? It gives you this ingrained sense of rhythm, right? And then when you learn more complicated rhythms like triplets and stuff, and dotted eighth to 16th, 1, 2 and 3 E and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1, and you can improvise even better.
Yeah. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a.
Yeah.
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a.
16th note triplets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bigger.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that was not something wrong with our audio. That was actually 16th note triplets. So yeah, I'm hopeful that helps. And like I said, Rachel, I'm going to try to actually respond to your email with some more detailed stuff, hopefully.
And we're going to get into note values a little bit later on in this show.
And we're going to get into this. So yeah, it kind of ties in.
So, shall we get on into it then?
Let's go ahead and get on into this.
Again, we want to thank you, Rachel, for writing in. We want to thank all of our good Patreon patrons and our PayPal donators, and all those who write in and engage us in our reviewers. And
Absolutely,
everything.
and ask us questions like this, because if you're wondering about these things, there are other musicians out there that are wondering too.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So.
Okay.
All right.
Now, the last episode, like I say, we talked a little bit about key signatures and some mnemonic devices to go with those, and some other things we see on the score. We've done that episode as well. But let's get back to the basics, shall we?
Let's get back to the basics.
From the first thing that we see on the left of the staff when you see a piece of music.
Yep, top left-hand corner, right where you're going to start reading, The first thing you see is the clef. Mm-hmm. And the clef sign is there to designate which notes you're going to be playing, basically in which range. Mm-hmm. We have 2 to 3 that are considered very, very common. So common that all musicians who read music have to be able to read them.
Right.
The first of those is the treble clef. Mm-hmm. And it looks kind of like a funky or like a really fancy S, sort of.
Yeah.
It's actually a G in like medieval font. And you'll also hear the treble clef referred to as the G clef. Mm-hmm. And basically this clef refers to our high notes. Everything from middle C sort of up, right? And theoretically into infinity, right?
Yeah, as high as the instrument can play or the singer can sing.
Right, yeah. This sort of plots our lines and spaces in our musical space. So you know that a staff has 5 lines, and in between those 5 lines are 4 spaces, right? And these lines and spaces designate notes, right? So, for example, the lowest line, if you see the treble clef sign, the lowest line is E.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And the space immediately above that is that F. Right? And then the next line is G. The second space is A. The middle line is B. And the third space, we number these from bottom up. So line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the bottom to the top. Space 1, 2, 3, 4. Space 3 is C. Yeah. And then the next line is D. And the next space is E. And the next line is F. So the lines are the notes E, G, B, D, F, going up away from middle C.
Yes.
Yeah, and that is every good boy does fine is the mnemonic device everybody learns to remember those.
As we know it. We're going to have some fun, though, because we're going to modernize these a little bit and play around with some of these, yeah. But I want to say also a cool thing about the G clef or the treble clef is it's kind of like when you go the inner spiral of it, when you're looking at how it spirals inward.
Right, yeah.
The part that it circles, the line that it circles is the G.
Is that G line above middle C? Absolutely, yeah. That's what's called the G clef.
So it's that point of reference as well.
Yeah, and that fancy little spirally thing actually, like I said, is a G, is a very, very old Middle Ages style G.
The most common clef for music, if you're looking for like...
Christmas tree ornaments and stuff. Yeah,
T-shirts.
Things on your coffee mugs and absolutely.
Yeah,
tattoos and. But obviously, these notes continue on into infinity, and we have other things called ledger lines, which are these little short little dashes.
Yeah.
Right. That notes can sit on. It's like a little temporary line. So, like if I'm on the bottom line of the treble clef and I'm looking at that E. A note that hangs below that line on the theoretical space below that line is, of course, D.
Mm-hmm.
And then C, our middle C, is actually the first ledger line below the treble staff, right? And in the same way, on the other end, on the top end, beyond this F, the sitting on top of that line in the theoretical space above that is a G. And then on a ledger line above that is an A. And then sitting on top of that ledger line in that theoretical space is B. And then 2 ledger lines up is C. Right? We're getting kind of high pitched at this point, right?
I'm glad I can still hear those frequencies.
Yeah, exactly. And theoretically, this can go up in ledger lines into infinity.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
You
get more than 3 or 4 and musicians are going to hate you. But theoretically it can go up or down into infinity. But what the treble clef sign does is sort of put us in that region of note space.
It's a point of reference.
It's a point of reference. It means you're playing middle C and up, these notes.
For a specific frequency range of notes. Right? Yeah. So we talked about how... And I think it's also fun to point out, or helpful to point out, that you probably gathered this, but the lines themselves are separated by thirds. Each line is a third away.
Yes.
The spaces are separated by thirds. F-A, that's a third.
Yes. The spaces spell out the word face, by the way, F-A-C-E.
F-A-C-E. And so if you see things stacked, say 3 notes stacked on top of each other by lines or by spaces, good chance you're looking at a triad.
You have good chance. Well, you're absolutely looking at a triad. It's just which one.
Yeah.
So, and that can be very helpful when you're reading and you're having to sort of visually see things pretty quickly, right? Because you got to play it.
You start to memorize patterns.
You absolutely do.
Okay, so here we go. Some mnemonic devices. We decided every good boy does fine. That's nice, but
it's nice.
What about the girls? Let's just leave
every good boy does fine. What, good girls don't do fine?
Yeah, no, let's just leave them out altogether. Let's leave everybody out altogether. And here's one I got for it. Ever go buy dinosaur fossils?
Ever go buy dinosaur fossils?
It might not be modernizing it, but...
Question mark? I love that it's an interrogative sentence.
Oh, no, you got it. I guess it is a question. Ever go buy dinosaur fossils? And I decided I'm going to have one random one and then one revolving around food.
Okay.
We're going to try and use things that everyone likes and relates to.
And everyone loves food.
Here we go. Eggs, grits, bacon, destroy, frown.
I don't think I would remember that.
Or eggs, grits, bacon, dine fast. No good.
You need two more. You need two more breakfast foods to start with D and F.
I know I was having a hard time with that. Well, how about the animals? Eternally grounded birds don't fly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Kind of sad.
It's kind of sad.
Well, not if you ask the kiwi or the ostrich.
Eternally grounded birds don't fly.
Yeah. Treble clef.
Treble. How you would remember that's treble clef, I don't know. But that's a problem with all of these, even our time-honored.
Oh, yeah, every good boy does. Yeah, totally. And the same thing with face.
Yep.
But I got one for that. Forget about calling exorcists. Maybe this person's just had a bad day.
I want to walk into a coffee shop and have strangers overhear us using these. Yeah, like this would be a great sort of prank, to sit at a coffee shop and fabricate a conversation that is using these as and see what people's reaction would be.
Probably think we're speaking some kind of a foreign code, some kind of a code language.
Yeah, that's right. They're all good spy code, right? Yeah.
Did you bring
eternally grounded birds don't fly? Yeah. Is the passcode, right?
Okay, so moving on for the food category for the spaces of the treble clef. Fruit and cheese every day.
Fruit and cheese every day. There you go. I like that one a lot.
Yep. And then for animals, frogs all croak eventually. Not dying necessarily. They just croak.
Or they just croak because they're frogs.
Exactly.
That's what frogs do.
So often a pianist will be reading from the grand staff.
Yes.
And that actually includes the treble clef on top. And the bass clef on the bottom.
And so we should probably talk about the bass clef then.
Mm-hmm.
So the bass clef then is a set of 5 lines of spaces. All staves are 5 lines, 4 spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The bass clef is a symbol set to the immediate left of that staff. That's kind of like a swirly kind of fishhook looking thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it kind of swirls around the line 4 of the staff and designates that line as F. So you'll hear the bass clef sometimes referred to as the F clef, right? And you may have already guessed this, but with the bass clef, we are dealing with all of the notes below middle C and down, right? So just like our middle C, the middle key in the piano, or the organ, just like a middle C was the bottom ledger line of the treble clef, right? It was in the ledger line immediately below the treble clef.
The one that floats below the treble clef.
Right, yeah. So is it the ledger line just immediately above the bass clef.
Mm-hmm.
And so that theoretical space then that is sitting on the top line of the bass clef is B. The B below middle C, immediately below middle C. That line that is the top line, line 5 of the bass clef, is A. The next descending space is G. The next descending line is F. Down to space 3 on the bass clef is E. The middle line of the bass clef is D. And then the next space down is C, the space 2. Yeah. And then on the second line, we have another B. On the first space of the clef, we have an A. And then the bottom line is this G. Yeah. And it keeps going down. The theoretical space below that is F. And then the first ledger line below is this E, which is important to all bass players because this is our lowest string.
Oh, that's my favorite note in the universe.
Yes, because this is the E string of the bass guitar, the infamous and often used.
As low as you go.
Yeah,
well, unless you have a
again,
5-string bass.
Can also go down into infinity.
Yeah, right.
Technically speaking, right? So that means that we have a different set of notes for the bass clef. The lines conform to a different set of notes. And those notes on the bass clef, the lines going up are G, B, D, F, A. Right? Good boys do fine always. Is the uninspired
The old school
way.
way. Would you like to be inspired by the new school way?
Yes, lay it on me.
How about this one? Great brains don't fear adversity.
That's a good one for the bass clef.
Right? And then the food category. Gordon bakes Danishes for all.
Gordon bakes.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, sure.
Chef Gordon Ramsay. Think about him.
Uh,
And then for the animal category, grizzly bears don't fool around.
love it.
Or,
Love it.
or with your favorite F word in there.
Now, for the spaces, I learned all cows eat grass. ACEG.
There's that. See, that's already an animal thing.
Yeah.
And then all cars eat gas is another
And
one.
all
that I
cars
heard.
eat gas.
That's plenty, right?
Probably.
But of course, I got some more. Athletes carry every game.
Interesting.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
All carnivores eat gristle? With a question mark.
Do all carnivores eat grizzle?
Not all of them. I don't think. I don't eat gristle.
All carnivores eat game. But that's just assuming human carnivore.
If you set it up in question format, then it's cool. I thought about that.
All carnivores eat grizzle?
Yeah. So it's a question.
Yeah.
And then for our animals, aren't cats ever graceful?
Aren't cats ever graceful?
Sometimes when I see a cat walking, I hear kind of a jazzy walking bass line. When a cat's like prowling.
Yeah. It's very cat-like.
Yes. And that was an Andalusian kind of chord progression, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on.
Yeah. So, and real quick, and like you said, if you're a piano player, you often play on what's called a grand staff.
Yeah.
Which is effectively a combination of these two. You know, they're sort of two tied together, and they're two staves going along at the same time. One is typically a treble, one is typically a bass, and you know all the high notes of the treble clef you're playing with your right hand, all the low notes of the bass clef you're playing with your left.
Right.
The two staves actually designate right and left hand. The clefs actually change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can play bass notes with your left hand, and then you'll have a bass symbol on that upper staff. But
that happens.
That definitely happens. But the typical basic beginner way is treble clef on top, bass clef on bottom. Treble clef you play with your right hand, bass clef you play with your left, and that's the grand staff, as if you were playing keyboard or organ. Or there are other instruments, harp, marimba, that play on what we call the grand staff, the two combined.
And Rachel, a lot of choral music is done for a piano, like a what do you call it, a reduction?
Yeah.
To where you expect to have the bass and the tenor on the bass clef,
right,
and the alto and soprano on the treble clef.
Right. Yeah. The soprano, the stems of the notes point up, and the alto, the stems of the notes point down. Mm-hmm. Same thing for tenor and bass on the bass clef.
Bass stems point down.
Tenor stems point up. Yep.
So that's a cool thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And now, certainly we're going to get into territory I'm least familiar with. But not so much you, Matt, because you do a lot more composition stuff than I do.
Okay, let's go with that.
Yeah. The alto clef.
The alto clef.
Yeah.
This is the clef that when I show it to my students, I hear audible groans. Because everything just got harder.
Ooh, I'm going to make a quick change to my little thing here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So the treble clef and the bass clef are the staves that everybody who reads music just has to read. And it doesn't matter if you're a flute player and you only play notes of the treble clef, as flute players do. You're still just expected to read bass just because. You know, like you're expected to know what year the War of 1812 was fought. You know, I mean, you're just expected to know this stuff, okay? And when you get into alto clef, you're really still kind of expected to read alto clef, I guess, but you're getting this area where, expected though you may be, people are often not particularly good at it. Unless you're a viola player, then you're great at it. This is their clef. Viola music is mostly written in alto clef. That's their default clef for viola music.
Their stomping grounds.
Yeah. This is their clef, so they're great at it. If you're not a viola player, then this clef often is can give you problems, much to the profound amusement of viola players around the world who read it no problem.
Suckers.
Yeah. So the idea, so it is this kind of, I don't know what you would call it. It's this kind of, well, it's an ornate C, right? It's kind of an ornate C from medieval times, and so but it kind of curls around the middle line. You've got these little curlicues that kind of come out in the direction of the staff, and kind of curl back on themselves and curl around the middle line.
To me, it kind of looks like if you squint your eyes, it kind of looks like the capital letter B.
Kind of.
Because it has the line on the left side, and then kind of a lump that curves around on the top, and then a lump that curves in on the bottom.
Right.
And both of these little curves merge in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's where the C note is supposed to
right,
be.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that middle line is actually middle C. Mm-hmm. So we've placed ourselves in note space that is very much the alto range, right? Mm-hmm. Right, hanging around middle C. So that means the lines of the alto clef go up from C. C, second line is E. Sorry, the middle line is C, line 3. So the fourth line is E, fifth line is G.
Moving up thirds.
And going down from that, the second line is A, and then the bottom line is F. Mm-hmm. And then the spaces are in between that.
Yeah.
So the lines of the alto clef are F, A, C, E, G.
Yeah.
And then the spaces are G, B, D, F.
I don't remember ever learning any mnemonic devices for the alto clef because I don't remember learning much about the alto clef.
Me either. Do we have any?
We do.
Good. I was hoping.
For the okay, so for the and this is good. This is the change I was going to make you mentioned earlier because it actually goes very well with what you're saying, and I think this will help the people remember the alto clef.
Awesome.
So it's F-A-C-E-G, right?
Yeah.
For alto clef, everyone groans. I was going to say grieves, but groans, man, that's good. That's good, dude.
For alto clef, everyone groans.
Yeah, you co-wrote that one, Matt.
I'm happy to help. I think I'm going to remember that one actually going forward.
I have an equally ridiculous one for the food category. For awesome casserole, exclude grapes.
I mean, yeah, you don't want grapes in most casseroles.
Unless you've ever had a grape casserole.
Yeah.
And then for animals, our sweet little furry friends, foxes are cool, even growling.
Okay.
Maybe I should have been cute. Cute or cool, you can exchange.
Foxes are cute, even growling. Yep. Good one.
For the spaces.
Well, good boys do fine still works.
Yep.
You notice this pattern of thirds, right? FAC, EGBDF, right? Good boys do fine. A, FACE spells face. CE, ACEG, all kinds of. So they're always in this same order. It's just where you're
skipping every other letter of the alphabet.
Right,
you do this basically all you're doing.
Yeah. Spoiler.
Spoiler.
Yeah. In every instance, that's what you're doing.
So for the alto clef for spaces, I got 3 good ones here. The first one, gigabytes deleted. Fudge.
Only he didn't say fudge.
No, only he didn't say fudge. Good bread does fulfill.
Good bread does fulfill.
And goose bites dog's face.
Goose bites dog's face.
That's like a headline. Goose bites dog, and you know that's happened a lot.
Sure.
In the more rural counties of this little state we live in, I've seen a lot of goose attacks. More so than I thought I would ever. And I was actually the victim of one.
Those things are mean, man. Mm-hmm. Those things are jerks.
Dude, when you are a 6-year-old kid and you got a goose coming at you, it's like an ostrich, man. Those wings all out.
You will run, I promise.
Yeah.
Which is the goose's idea.
Yeah.
That's the big idea he had, was to get you out of the... Mm-hmm. So there you go. So that is alto clef.
And that is the end of the mnemonic devices, because we still have a few clefs to get through here.
Well, it's the end of the mnemonic devices, and it's also the end of what I consider every musician being expected to know, or at least be familiar with. We're getting into more and more obscure stuff as we leave this.
Yeah.
Right?
And not to mention, it's almost better sometimes if you make up your own mnemonic devices, and the more disgusting or shocking or crass they are, the more likely you are to remember them.
Facing alto clef, everyone groans. I'm going to remember that one.
I like that one.
I'm going to remember alto clef better now.
Yeah. Nice.
But after alto clef, the next most often seen one, I guess, is tenor clef. Mm-hmm. And it's not like you don't need to understand this. I mean, bassoon players, lots of people play in tenor clef. It is the same situation as the alto clef, but it is bumped a line up. Mm-hmm. So it's the exact same symbol, but it's kind of hanging up just above this, not fully above the staff, but it's kind of one line up. So the top of it is hanging above the staff. And the curlicues are curling around the fourth line, not the middle line. Uh-huh. And that means that line, the fourth line, is in fact middle C. So it's like the alto clef, but just sort of shifted up a little bit.
That's where the C is.
Right. That's where the middle C is.
Yeah.
Middle C specifically, right? And then you have the soprano clef, which I have probably literally never seen on a score. Mm-hmm. And it is where, again, same little symbol, same little alto clef symbol, but it is on the bottom line, meaning middle C is that bottom line. So everything above that
pretty high.
It's actually, it's lower than...
Oh, yeah, not so much. What's the point of that?
I don't know.
Maybe
that's why we don't use it so much anymore. Mezzo soprano, middle C is on the second line.
Oh wait, so going back, so it's a third lower than.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do the math in my head. It's a soprano clef is a third lower than the treble clef.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the soprano singer. Yeah, I mean, different. Singers can be really awesome and hit really high notes, and different singers have different natural ranges. But when writing for a soprano. Rachel, most sopranos top out at the A that's above the treble staff. Mm-hmm. Right? So, if you're going to create a clef that's just natural in their range, it wouldn't be as high as what a violin or a flute can do.
Right.
I'm just spitballing here.
But by the time you're separating clefs by a third, come on, is it really?
By this, yeah. Once you've gotten into soprano clef, you're kind of these are obscure compared to the treble, bass, and alto for sure.
Sure.
Mezzo soprano, the middle C is on the second line. I mean, mezzo soprano is a little bit lower in range. A mezzo soprano, the singer, is a soprano, but her range tends to be a little lower. Mm-hmm. There you go. Baritone is on the fifth line. I mean, come on, man.
That's awkward looking.
I've never seen that on a score. Mm-hmm. I really never. We're getting into some really obscure. Basically, the TLDR of all of this is you can take that alto clef symbol, put it on any line, and create a clef.
Yeah.
Right? And create a clef where middle C is that line that you put the sign on.
It's a movable clef.
Exactly. It's a movable clef.
You don't do that so much with the C F clef or the G clef. That doesn't happen. The C clef is the one that you can.
Yeah, I haven't seen it as much. I have seen a soprano clef with a little octave, a little 8 at the bottom of the sign. So it's just like the treble clef, but there's a little 8 hung onto the very bottom of it. And that is a sign that it is the treble clef, but also an octave below.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
I have seen that. I forget what you call that. Somebody write in and tell me. There's a name, but I forget what it is.
So that's only the clefs. But
those are the clefs.
That's all the clefs, though.
We have now discussed the first symbol you see when reading music.
So get some coffee.
Get some coffee. So the very next thing you're going to see is the key signature. Mm-hmm. Now, we have talked about key signatures. When we talked about keys, major keys in the circle of fifths, we talked about how a key signature was a way of designating what key you're in, aka what scale you're using, mm-hmm. by pointing out the notes that should be sharp or flat to create that scale. Mm-hmm. For example, give me a major key, Jeremy. Pick one.
A major.
A major. Good and easy one. So A major is a key that has 3 sharps. Refer back to our episode on major scales on the circle. I think it was like episode 3. It was an early one.
Pretty early.
Refer back to that episode for what accidentals are in all the major and minor keys.
Oh, episode 5, yeah, for the major. Episode 8 for minor.
There you go. There you go. But so the key of A major has 3 sharps, and those sharps are F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. Mm-hmm. So in looking on a page, then the key signature has a sharp symbol, which looks depends on how old you are. It looks like either a number sign, a pound sign, or a hashtag, depending on your age. But it is a little sharp sound, and it'll have a sharp on. If it is the treble clef, it'll be the F that is the top line, and then the C that is on the third space, and then on the G that is that G is sitting immediately above the treble clef. It'll be that F, C, and G. Mm-hmm. And those three sharps will be there on those notes in your key signature to signify that F sharp, that F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp should be played in lieu of F natural, C natural, and G natural every time you encounter it in the score.
Yes.
And in so doing, you will be playing in the key of A major. Or F sharp minor, as the case may be. There's no way to distinguish based on key signature alone, right?
Because
most of those have those three sharps.
Right.
Right, because they are the relative minor.
Every major key has a relative minor that shares the same key signature.
Yeah. Something else we covered in episode 8, if you want to review. In bass clef, it will be the F that is the fourth line, the G that is the fifth space, and the C that is the second space. Mm-hmm. So it's the same pattern. It just gets shifted so that they're on the right notes.
Yeah, it's like the first sharp would be the F, then the third down, or
right.
no fourth down to the C.
It alternates up and down.
Up and down, yeah.
With one exception. When you get out into B that has 5 sharps, you actually go down twice.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
You get to recognize the shape of these key signatures.
You learn to recognize the shape of these and the overall pattern. That's why it's done in the same pattern every time. So you can just look at it and go, oh, B, without having to count sharps necessarily.
Yeah.
But there you go. And flats the same way. If you're playing in the key of A flat, for example, B flat, A flat, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, you're going to have 4 flats. And it's going to start on the middle line of the treble clef or the second line of the bass clef and just go up, down, up, down, up, down until you've got flats on all the appropriate notes.
And as long as we describe the sharp symbol, we should probably just say that the flat, if you don't know it by now,
is a little lowercase b.
Looks like a little lowercase b, yep.
Yeah, although it's actually not a lowercase b, it's an entirely different symbol.
Yeah, right.
Because I learned this in writing my dissertation. I couldn't just use a lowercase b. I actually had to download a font that had flat sign, musical flat sign. But for, unless you're writing your dissertation, it looks like a lowercase b.
A lowercase b will pass, in my opinion.
Absolutely, right. And so these key signatures then designate what, key you're in nominally. Like I said, you have no way of knowing whether that's A flat major or what is F minor. You're just going to have to figure that out through context.
It tells you what notes to play.
It tells you what notes to play. It tells you what notes to flat or sharp. And, all Fs will be F sharp if F sharp is in the key signature. Not just the ones on the right line of space, but all Fs. Or all Bs will be B flat, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. It's kind of understood. It would be redundant to do that. It would be busy and redundant to do that on all of them. But
you won't be able to see anything. So it's understood.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the next thing we see?
The next thing we're going to see after our key signature is our time signature. Mm-hmm. Now, you can refer back to our episode 3. I think it was one of those early ones.
Yes, that was actually the one we done on rhythm.
Right, in which we talk about what a meter is, and a time is. Specifically, a meter is taking the beats, the pulses that is found in music, to which you tap your foot or nod your head or headbang or whatever. Shake your money maker.
Shake your money maker. Yeah.
Taking those beats, those pulses, and grouping them into 2s, 3s, or 4s, most typically, right? And like we were saying at the beginning of the podcast, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is a meter of 4. Mm-hmm. So what you will see on a score will be, for example, 4-4, meaning 2 4s stacked one on top of the other. Mm-hmm. What that will mean, the top 4 means that you are in a 4 pattern. So you are counting 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bottom 4 is telling you what note value equals one of those beats. Uh-huh. So in 4-4, for example, it is the quarter note that equals a beat. So as you count out 1, 2, 3, 4, you have counted out 4 quarter notes, right? So an eighth note would be a half a beat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? And a half note would be 2 beats, 1, 2, same note, right? If you said 4, 2, then it would be a half note. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And so a quarter note would be half the beat, and an eighth note would be, like it would feel like. I tell my students that quarter notes will feel like eighth notes, and eighth notes will feel like 16th notes.
Well, yes, because there is between different tempos, there's always a break point where an eighth note becomes a quarter note, in my opinion, and it's often flexible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Meter really doesn't. Tempo is how fast the beats come together. Is how fast together those beats are happening.
Yes.
Meter is just about how they're grouped.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're taught, when you play jazz and you play those really fast tempo things, you're taught to, tap your foot on every other beat, right? So,
Yeah.
So it kind of, I see what you're saying.
And our jazz bass teacher, Cleve, always had us tapping our feet, going back to the using your body.
Pat your foot, fool.
You pat your foot, fool.
Yeah, he really knew what he was doing in so many ways. Because rhythm is a thing of the body. It's a thing that is physical. Our hearts beat, our nerves tick. Our muscles move, and that's where we get rhythm. It's not an intellectual concept. Yeah.
So, and there's
where were we?
There can be all kinds of crazy time signatures.
There can. So, 4/4 is by far the most common. So common that you will often see just a C sitting there, just a regular old C, meaning common time. You will see 3/4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They're grouped in 3 instead of
The waltz.
Yep. You'll see things like 6/8. Which is actually, it doesn't really mean there are 6 beats in 8 and the eighth note gets the beat. Although that technically, there are 6 eighth notes in every measure, but it's grouped differently. It's called a compound time. And think of it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You think of it as a group of 3 and then another group of 3.
Yeah.
And this is just something you just have to learn. The sheet music doesn't really tell you this. You just have to learn and know it.
And if you're familiar with the Irish jig,
then you're familiar with 6/8.
And it's almost like 16/8. It's almost like 6/16 to me because a lot of them are like that fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah. These are they can be very fast tempos. If you're familiar with blues patterns, like what you're doing there is holding a quarter note eighth. So you're eighth, and then striking another one. That makes sense. So like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. And in my head, I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
Except not really, because I can't count that fast.
Yeah.
So I'm counting 1, 6, 4, 6, 1. 1, 3, 4, 6, 1, 3. Or something like that. I didn't pay that much attention.
Well, we did a whole episode actually on odd time signatures. That might be a fun one to listen to.
A good one to go back and listen to if you want to know more about 7/8. Yeah.
Or 21.5 over
11/16.
There was some crazy ones.
Yeah. 6/8 followed by 3/4. And what the heck does that even mean?
Yeah. And why did they do that?
Yeah. So there you go.
All right, man. Let's talk about the notes themselves.
Right, yeah. Because so after you've gotten past all of this preliminary stuff, you know your clef, you know your key, you know your time signature. Now it's time to start looking at actual notes. And so we place notes in frequency range, pitch, and we place notes in time, and then notes have length of time, right?
Yeah.
So our pitch space is our note space. What line or space in what clef, right?
Yes.
Which corresponds to notes. What time is our meter, right? And every cycle of meter is demarcated by a bar line, little vertical line drawn through the staff, right? So if you're in 3/4, then every 3/4 notes worth of music, you get a little line to mark that this is where the pattern started over, right? We call that a measure or a bar.
Yeah, okay.
Right? In terms of note length, well, we sort of have a whole bunch of cute little designs for this. Right? Beginning with the whole note.
Yes.
The whole note is just a little white bubble. It's just a little oval-looking, egg-looking thing.
Yeah.
Right? And it...
Kind of like an eyeball, kind of like an eye.
Yes.
Shaped kind of thing.
Yes. It is worth 4 quarter notes, which is why they call it a whole note, right? 4 quarter notes, 4 fours is a whole note.
Divided into 4 quarters.
Yeah. It is worth 4 quarter notes, which means in 4/4 it is worth 4 beats, which means that it is one whole measure of a note. So if you see this, you would sustain this note or group of notes for 4 whole beats.
All up until the downbeat of the next bar, right?
Right.
Releasing on the downbeat of the next bar, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Shall we demonstrate?
Yes, let's demonstrate.
And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. There's a whole note.
That is a whole note. And, it could be a whole chord, right? Notes that are played together are sort of stacked vertically, and you see the simultaneous, so...
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? And they would be shaped like whole notes, all of them, if they were all whole notes.
Literally stacked on top of each other.
Literally stacked on top of each other. The whole note is then divided into half notes, which are worth 2 quarter notes. So in 4/4, this would be 2 beats.
Okay.
And there are 2 half notes and a whole note. This is like counting change, right? 50 cents in a dollar. If people still do that, I don't know. But so there are 2 half notes and a whole note. So if you saw 2 half notes together, you would hold one for 2 beats of 4/4, and then play the next one for the next 2 beats of that measure of 4/4.
Shall we?
Let's.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Cool.
Kind of might have held it a little long there, sorry, but yeah.
Oh, that's all right.
You get the idea, right?
Yep.
So where the first one was just sustained for the whole measure, that second one, there was 2 iterations there. A half note and then a half note. The half note, you should see where I'm going with this, is divided into quarter notes.
Oh, we should talk about the appearance of the half note, shouldn't we?
Oh, we should talk about the appearance. And by the way, the half note looks kind of like a whole note. It's a little egg-shaped bubble kind of thing, but it's got a stem on it, which means a little vertical line going up from the note, or sometimes down from the note if the note is really high, so you're not, taking up more space. But it's that little unshaded circular note with a stem on it.
Unshaded being the key thing, because this pattern is now the kind of new look of the note once we get past whole note. Only the whole note has that completely level, stemless thing, where now the level shifts at a bit of an angle, and there's a stem added to it.
There's a little vertical line added to the shape of the note. Speaking of vertical lines and shading, the half note is then divided, and you can probably see where I'm going with this, is divided into 2 quarter notes. So there are 2 quarter notes and 1 half note, just like there are 2 half notes and 1 whole note, which means there are 4 quarter notes and 1 whole note, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, this is just like counting. This is just fractions that we all learned, hopefully, in elementary school math. And a quarter note will last for a single beat of 4/4 times. So with every beat, you're striking new quarter notes. Right?
Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep.
Yeah. So the quarter note then looks like a half note, except it is shaded in. It is black, where the half note is white. Still the little bubble on the liner space, still the vertical line attached to it, but now the middle has been blackened in. It has been shaded in. And that is a quarter note. Yeah.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
What happens when you divide a quarter note?
You get an eighth note.
Ah, that's what I thought.
2 eighth notes and a quarter note, right? 4 eighth notes and a half note. 4 eighths is a fraction that reduces to 1/2, right? The fractions work, people.
Yeah, they do, right?
8 eighth notes and a whole note, right? And the eighth note is in a time signature of 4/4, and we're using 4/4 for example because that is the most common, and your meter will change what gets the beat and stuff, but you get the idea.
Sure, yeah.
Right. So and in 4/4, eighth notes would be a half a beat, so there would be 2 eighth notes every beat.
Every beat.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Nice,
huh? Yeah. And the eighth note is shaded like a quarter note, has a stem like a quarter note, and also has a flag.
So enter the flag on the
Enter
eighth
the flag.
note.
There's a little wispy thing coming off the end of that stem, that vertical line, that we call a flag.
Mm-hmm.
And the eighth note has 1.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there's a string of eighth notes together, we will often save ink by barring them. So there'll be a solid black line going from the bottom of one stem to the bottom of the next. And that is called a bar. And it means exactly the same thing as the flag.
Mm-hmm.
If you see just one black line, you are dealing with eighth notes.
Makes sense.
Yeah. We can then divide the eighth note
Into sixteenths.
into sixteenths. 2 sixteenths in an eighth, 4 sixteenths in a quarter note. 4/16, right, reduces to 1/4. 4 sixteenths in a quarter note, which means 8 sixteenths in a half note, 16 sixteenths in a whole note.
I wonder how can you pull this off, Matt? Because we're getting pretty busy now.
I'll try to slow down, but
You ready? You want to try it out?
yeah. Let's try this. Let's see.
16 notes and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and nice.
Yeah.
And
then
well, those have 2 flags. Those have 2.
those have 2 flags, right? So the beyond the 16th note has 2 flags, where the 8th note has 1. Or if the 16th notes are barred, because there's a string of them or whatever, then they will have 2 bars.
Mm-hmm.
Bars mean the same thing as flags.
A string of these smaller, these shorter notes is quite common, I think.
Yeah. 4 16th notes strung together is very common, and those will all be barred. So you'll see 2 thick black lines attaching the stems of all of these, rather than a whole bunch of 2 flag notes, right? Mm-hmm. And it means the same thing, and they're usually barred according to the beat. So if you're in 4/4, there's 4 16th notes in a quarter note, right? Mm-hmm. So those 4 will be barred together, and you can sort of visually see where the beat is, because on beat 2, you'll have a different set of notes that may or may not be barred together. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, only 2 of those will be barred together, and then you'll see, the top thick line, the bar, stops, and then there's a third note, and that note is an eighth note. Right?
Yeah, right.
So that note was not subdivided. So there's 2 16ths that make an eighth, and then that last eighth, and that goes and it makes a quarter.
And the bar just breaks right there in the middle. It just disappears in the middle.
It just disappears in the middle. Yeah. And we count that as 1 E and, right? 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and. Do that exactly backwards, where the eighth note is in front, and then 2 16th notes is 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. So you're starting at this point, maybe starting to get the sense that rhythm in music comes from combinations of these. Mm-hmm. Right, quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes. 1 and a 2 E and a 3 and 4, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? You're combining these to create rhythms, to create combinations of lengths of notes that are distinctive to particular music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably underestimated how important rhythm is in developing a theme or making a theme, creating a theme.
It is more recognizable than a pitch interval in some circumstances. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, as we keep on dividing these down, we just did 16th notes, right, with 2 flags?
Right.
We keep on dividing, and I think you can go to 32nd notes and even to 64th notes, or no?
Yeah.
You can keep on dividing anything.
Theoretically, it can be divided into infinity. You get to that kind of thing where the door never closes, that old paradox.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, you can divide 16ths into 32nds, and you can even divide 32nds into 64ths, and you're just adding flags, right? 32nd notes have 3 flags or bars. 64th notes have 4 flags or bars. Beyond that, you're really not going to see people start talking about grace notes, right? Just little tiny notes that are considered too fast to have any real rhythmic value. So that's basic. That's the basic rhythm palette that we have to work with here, and different combinations of those can create pretty much any kind of melody or rhythm you want.
Gosh, I wish I had. Can you play us a grace note on the piano by chance?
Oh yeah, grace note. It's just so short that it has no rhythmic value at all. So I was like,
Yes.
that
So-
little.
Yeah.
Except I played that first note so fast.
Yep. You hit it on the way down. You
Yeah.
just kind of happened to hit it on the way down, and it is probably about the time duration of what might be a 30-second or 64th
Or
note.
120, 128th note.
128th. Yeah. Can you try it? Can you do a 64th notes or 30-second notes? Is that possible to play?
Oh. There's only one way to find out.
Okay. We'll just do 30-second notes.
Let's do 30. I can't do
Whatever.
64th. I'll go ahead and tell you. But let's do 30-second.
All right. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and...
I hit too many. But okay. All right. You get the idea.
That's about the tempo we're dealing with. That's about
Yeah.
the speed we're dealing with.
Yeah, you get the idea.
And that was a pretty slow. That was probably 90 BPM when I was counting. So if you want to put that in standard.
Yeah.
And then 64th note is probably more like a snare roll, something like a...
Yeah, you're basically machine gunning at that point. I don't think people really very often play a string of 64th notes, right? I mean, I think you see one or two in a kind of deal, right? All right.
But back to the grace note, you'll see a regular note and then hovering like a supertext,
Superscript, yeah.
kind of looking note,
Yeah.
smaller, teeny tiny note hanging up to the top top right of that note.
Yeah, and we're talking about how fast these are. It's worth remembering that tempo dictates how fast. You could play six at quarter note equals 10 beats a minute. You could probably play 64th notes all day, right? Because it's tempo that designates how close together the beats are. The 64th thing is just basically how much of the beat is this taking up,
Right.
how much of the meter count, the measure, is this taking up.
What division is this occupying?
Yeah. What else?
Well, a little bit about triplets, I think. Triplet.
So, all of this time, we have been taking these notes and dividing them by 2, which is standard, common. It is also possible to divide them by 3. So instead of there being 2 eighth notes in a quarter note, there can be 3. The quarter note is subdivided by 3, each being a third of a quarter note long. And we call this a triplet. And we'll call it an eighth note triplet to signify that it is the subdivision of the quarter note. But clearly these aren't eighth notes. There's 3 of them there. So we bar them together and write the little number 3.
So we're going to have 3 notes occupy the space of one
quarter note. Right, yeah.
Shall we demonstrate?
Please.
And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep.
Yeah, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and yeah. Or triplet, or 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 3 lolly, 4 lolly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to do that.
1 and is my go-to.
Yeah, I learned 1 and then later realized that it's the same thing as 1 and a 2 and a 3, as it and that might have even contributed to my mixing up those rhythm signatures a little bit.
I see.
Back in the day, playing 1 and a when I meant to do a triplet.
So instead of saying 1 and a 2, they should have been going 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 if they wanted to get triplets.
Yeah, exactly.
That screwed you up.
Yeah, that screwed me up. Yeah.
Oh, isn't it more common to have the 3 hovering over the bars, or is that kind of sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't, where you have the groupings of the 3 notes and you actually have the letter, small letter, I'm sorry.
Small number 3.
Small number 3.
Yeah, that totally happens. To designate that it's a triplet. If you have a lot of them, they might stop writing the 3s because they will assume that you get from 3 notes being barred together that this must be a triplet.
Okay.
And sometimes it will not be there for that reason. But if the maker of your score is being nice to you, they'll write a little 3.
Okay, I was wondering if that was a standard thing that you would expect to see every time, or if it's just depends in on the publisher or the composer.
Generally, especially if it's like one lone triplet out in a sea of otherwise, normally divided beats.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But yeah, you'll see the 3. Sometimes you won't, but a lot of times you will.
Yeah. Right on.
So there you go. Last thing about rhythms is the dotted note.
The dotted note, okay.
Which adds half of that note value's length to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, a dotted quarter note is a quarter note and a half.
Yeah.
In other words, 3/8 notes. Yeah. So, if I were to, I'll just do this real quickly. If I was to go for a dotted note and a half, I would go into the half of the next beat. So instead of 1, 2, I'm going 1, 2, and 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that first note was the dotted quarter note. There was a quarter and a half.
And that gives you basically a half of the note that it's dotting.
Right, yeah. So
Plus.
a dotted half note is a half note and a half. So in other words, 3 quarter notes.
Uh-huh.
Right? So 1, 2, 3, 4,
Uh-huh.
Or without the 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Because
something else can happen on 4.
release time is kind of important.
Yeah, a little bit.
More
yeah.
so than I ever gave it time and effort. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you don't hold it for long enough, you're going to get off time, and your conductor will notice and will scowl at you.
Oh, well, you should actually put a rest if you're gonna to indicate. We didn't talk about rests, did we, Matt?
We didn't talk about rests.
Well, all we need to know is that the rest is the quiet version of a note you would be playing, right?
For every rhythmic value, there is a corresponding rest value, which means don't play anything for the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So there is a whole note rest that looks like a little dash hanging below the 4th line.
Like an upside down hat, right?
My grandmother taught me that it was so lazy that it was a whole rest, that it was hanging below the line.
Okay.
So it's so lazy, it's a whole rest.
Like a little block kind of hanging below the line.
And it is the same rhythmic value as a whole note for lasts for the whole measure of 4/4.
Mm-hmm.
The half rest is the little top hat hanging up on the middle line, right? And that is the same as a half note. It's just don't play anything for 2 quarter notes, for 2 beats of 4/4.
Mm-hmm.
A quarter rest is a little vertical squiggly line looking thing.
It's just weird.
It's kind of weird looking.
I've never seen anything like it before.
A little vertical squiggly line kind of thing, and it's a quarter rest. 8th notes is a little comma looking thing. So there's a little swoop up and then a dash down.
Yeah.
And that is an 8th rest. Don't do anything for the space of an 8th note, and then you add little swoops to that dash for 16th note rest and 32nd note rest.
So at that point, the rest kind of correspond with the flag system.
Yeah.
The whole note.
Right.
It's got the upside down thing, the half note.
Yeah, right, yeah. And you can also add dots to rests and have a dotted quarter rest, right? Same thing as a dotted quarter note. It's a quarter rest and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
And I would just recommend you go check out our website to see what this
stuff really looks like.
The quarter note rest, because it's just a weird.
It's just weird looking.
It's like an alien symbol that I can't describe. It's like a letter 3 with a swoopy bottom kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like a stretched out letter 3 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Glad we thought about the rest.
I'm glad we thought about the rest too.
Moving on, shall we?
Yeah. So what else is there in a score, man? So much stuff, so much information to keep up with.
I don't know. At some point, I'm sure I knew the difference between a slur and a tie, but somewhere later in life, I forgot. So maybe some of our listeners have as well. We have this little curvy thing connecting one note to the next.
Yeah, it's a little kind of swoopy line that connects one note to the next. When those 2 notes are the same note, they're on the same line or space or what have you, then that swoopy line is a tie, and a tie ties the second note to the first note so that the first note is sustained through the rhythmic value of the tie.
Mm-hmm.
This is important when you're sustaining a note across a beat, or across a bar line, across the measure into the next measure. That kind of thing happens.
Mm-hmm.
It just means hold that note not only for its length, but for the length of the note to which it is tied, that second note.
Yes.
Literally so hold it through all of that.
Marrying the 2 notes together, essentially.
Yeah. This is important in creating some of the more tricky rhythms, tricky note lengths.
Okay, so that's a tie. So what is a slur?
A slur is something completely different. It's a little swoopy line that swoops across several notes, often of multiple different pitches. And in general, it kind of marks phrasing. It kind of marks that these notes are together in some kind of way. Depending on your instrument, for example, any string instrument like a violin or cello, all of these notes will be played under one bow direction. So you bow down and play all notes slurred together, and then bow up and play all on the next slur or whatever, right? And if you saw no slurs, you'd just be sawing back and forth. Or if you're playing a wind instrument, all these notes that are slurred together are played in a single breath, without re-articulating or rebreathing.
Maybe the same deal with singing, or like in the case of a melisma.
Yeah, it's melisma, yeah. In the case of singing, nobody wants to tell a singer how to breathe. But in the case of singing, it is, when multiple notes are sung under a single syllable.
Yes.
Alleluia. Right? And all those notes under one syllable, all those notes under that syllable are slurred together.
Slurred together, okay.
Yeah.
So it's really... its notes kind of intended to be played within a certain motion or breath or one action.
Right, yeah. In piano, it's a little more subtle. It's a little more, maybe holding those notes with just a hair longer so that they feel kind of like a note kind of spilled over into the next, just a little bit, not really perceptibly so.
They kind of fade into each other.
A little bit, yeah.
Still with the attack, but
with the attack.
The leftover note. What did you say earlier? Was the name détaché from?
Détaché.
Détaché.
Yeah. It's just sort of right, as opposed to
yes,
subtle, right?
Yeah,
but
you had just a little bit of silence in between those notes in the case of détaché.
Right. Yeah.
But as you're slurring, they're all connected. There's no space in between.
Right. So slurs, it kind of depends on what instrument you're talking about, but they kind of mean that these notes are together in some way. Right. It's not really a rhythmic thing. It's more of an expression thing, phrasing thing.
Good to clarify that.
Yep. So some leftover stuff.
Some other things that we might come across that just picking up a piece of music that we might not have talked about yet on this podcast.
Right.
The repeat sign.
Looks like a percent sign.
It does look like a percent sign.
Except maybe with dots instead of circles.
And I find this comes up in more lead sheets and chord charts maybe than classical music.
Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't really come up in classical music, but it absolutely comes up in chord charts and lead sheets all the time.
You'll probably see it in the jazz real book, or the fake book, or the real book, whatever you call it. But yeah, it's telling you to either hold over the same melodic material or the same rhythmic or the same harmonic material from the previous measure.
Yeah, just repeat that measure again. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then we have the double lines and double dots, which is a little more in the well, I guess they use it in both lead sheets and classical music, right?
Nah. Well, are you talking about the repeat bar?
The bars,
yeah. They do that. So,
what I call the double lines and double dots.
Okay.
So if you have 8 measures and you have 2, and the very left measure, the first measure, has 2 lines on it.
Yep.
And then the very last of those 8th measures has 2 lines for the bar lines.
Yep.
Then that means it's kind of one section. It's considered a section of music.
And you should repeat that section.
Well, you repeat it if it has 2 dots by it.
Right, yeah.
But not necessarily just the 2 lines by themselves.
The 2 lines, that means the end of something, the end of the section, the end of the verse, the end of the something.
Yeah, like a segment or a section or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and that comes up in classical and I think in lead sheet music, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And again, we talked about tempos a little bit. We talked about tempos, maybe stuff you see on a score, because we talked about adagio and andante. Yeah,
I would go back and refer to that episode definitely for all the Italian words. If you're not into Italian words like allegro con brio and stuff like that, in most popular music, they have what we call metronome markings. BPMs.
Way more specific.
Yeah. Quarter note equals 90 means the quarter note, a quarter note, there are 90 quarter notes in a minute, beats per minute, right? 90 BPM, is quarter note equals 90, right?
Yeah.
In classical music, you have to know Italian, so you have to know allegro is, kind of fast, and adagio is slow, and maestoso and stuff like that gets kind of subjective, but
And I imagine that these terms came around before the metronome, or no. I mean,
yeah, they did. They did
Okay.
come along before the metronome.
and that's why we don't often see specific. Even if you look them up, it's like, well, this is such and such, circa such and such.
Circa such and such, yeah.
They don't give definite BPM readings for Andante versus
Yeah,
Allegro.
Beethoven was alive when the metronome was invented, and he went nuts.
Did it?
Yeah, and he went back to add metronome markings to all the music he had written up until that point.
Really?
Yeah, but he didn't really know what he was doing, and he put in metronomes that were way too fast.
As if his music isn't hard enough.
As if his music isn't hard enough. They were all. Everybody ignores those metronome markings. I heard an orchestra play just a few passages of the Fifth Symphony once at Fifth Symphony is that one at the metronome marking that Beethoven put in, and it was ridiculous.
I mean, I want to say you had to be.
It was like seriously, it was nuts.
I want to say you had to be some kind of a special brain, like the same kind that has perfect pitch.
Yeah.
To know, hey, or just a really skilled drummer.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Hey, give me 104 BPM. Oh yeah, got it. Bump, bump, bump.
Yeah. Right.
No, it's
an approximation.
It's an approximation. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
All right, man. Dynamics. Again, that's more stuff we talked about on that stuff you see on
Stuff
school.
you see, yeah. So refer back to episode 30 really quickly. Dynamics tell you how loud or soft to play. So forte and F is considered loud. Piano, a P is considered soft. And then you have things like MF, mezzo forte, which is a little loud. Or MP, mezzo piano, which is a little soft. Or you can have two Fs, which is very loud. Or two Ps, which is very soft. Or three Fs, which is as loud as possible. Or three Ps, which is as soft as possible. Right? Theoretically, this too goes into infinity. There are like sort of avant-garde scores where people have like five Fs, but really after the third F, you're not saying anything anymore. People are just going to play as loud as possible, no matter what.
How many Fs are in a gunshot? How many Fs are in a jet engine? Who knows?
Yeah.
Hey, another fun thing about the Fs is just looking at them, they look like the F holes of the cello and the violin family.
Yeah, they do.
instruments. And I wonder if there's a connection. Surely there is.
I wonder if that's just entirely coincidence.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
You'd think we would know.
Well, the shape of those things would have come from the Petrucci font of the Renaissance, right? And the violin would have been made, or kind of come into its modern form in a similar time period. Who knows?
Huh.
Who knows? That's something great to research if you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about bar lines.
We talked about
bit.
bar lines.
Yeah, we kind of covered that pretty well. Just going through our notes, folks. We got notes. We actually prepare for these things.
Believe it or not, Jeremy does.
I try. I had to call Matt yesterday to make sure we had everything here. Multiple endings.
So you will see a little on top of the staff. You will see a little 1 and a little dash, and then a thick line, a final bar line, right? This thicker, meaning the end. And then after that, you will see a little 2, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is go through everything and play what's under the 1, and then you'll see the double bar, double dot, repeat. Then go back, but this time, instead of playing what's under the 1, play what's under the 2.
So you actually skip the 1 and move to the second ending.
Yeah. It's a way of when music does everything twice, but the second time it ends a little different. It's a way of doing that quickly and easily and not wasting paper.
Maybe the first time around it has a half cadence, and then the second time around it has an authentic cadence.
Is a great
something
example.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's important. So this first ending and second ending, and again, that's like a little number with a little line sticking out and then pointing straight down at the end of the line.
Right,
kind of
right,
thing.
yeah.
And again, we'll try and put all these on the website.
Yep.
I got my work cut out for me, I think, on this one. And then what we have, similarly about the endings and where to move, kind of indicators of where to skip to.
Right.
We have da capo.
Da capo.
And del signo.
Dal, D-A-L.
Dal, okay.
Dal signo, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Da capo means go back to the beginning.
To the head.
To the head, literally. Right.
Decapitate, to remove someone's head.
Right.
Capo, head.
From the same Latin origin, decapitate, right? Same as the word captain, right?
Oh, no. Yeah, the head. Okay, I didn't know
Yeah,
about
yeah. But yeah, so da capo means go back to the head, to go back to the beginning and play again.
Very.
And the second time through, you'll probably see a second ending. Right. Dal signo means the same thing, but don't go all the way back to the beginning. There's a little funky. I can't even begin to describe that sign. But dal signo means to the sign. There's a little sign somewhere in the music. It's like go back to that and play from there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's going to be somewhere other than the very beginning.
Other than the very beginning. Right.
Dal capo says beginning. Da capo says beginning. Dal signo says it just gives you a skip point, a jump point, a link, so to speak, I guess.
Right.
If we're talking website terms.
Yeah.
Modern terms.
I wish I could describe that sign. I can't. But you can't miss it. It's a big, funky looking thing that's sitting on top of the staff.
Another weird, it looks like it could be a crest, like a family crest or something.
Yeah. It seriously does. There's a type of aria from the Baroque period called a da capo aria, because at the end of it, you always go back and sing, go back to the beginning, and sing to the thicker bar line that represents the end. So
I was going to say, it sounds like a never-ending thing. You just go to loop it.
Yeah, it creates an ABA form, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And then finally, the coda.
And then the coda, which is
appropriately, finally.
Which is final, and it's really more of a form thing. But you'll see this. You'll see things like DC al coda. Mm-hmm. So go back to the beginning, play it through again, and after you've played it through again, go to this piece of music marked coda, which is just the ending material.
So it might be a little tag they stick at the end after you've gone through the piece twice, and then do the two different endings.
Right.
In this scenario.
Right. Yeah. And you'll see al coda.
It's kind of closing material, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's closing material.
Mm-hmm. And is this little symbol the thing that looks like the crosshair?
Yeah.
Kind of like a little circle with a cross within it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You see that in the real book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen that a lot.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So much information.
A lot of information. Again, check out the website. Not while you're driving 70 miles an hour, but a lot of these symbols you'll know exactly when you see them.
Yeah, you will. They're pretty standard stuff and not hard to recognize.
But if I was sitting here writing a piece of music right now and I had to make a quarter note rest, I might actually have to go through my text and be like, how do I draw this thing again? You know what I mean?
Yeah, somebody taught me a little thing to make those once, and so it was so. And I don't remember it now.
Yeah, you have to show it to me.
Yeah, if I even remember it, this is how often I handwrite my music anymore. Is I don't think I even remember how to draw it.
Someone needs to tell me, like, okay, the little fox is gonna run up here on the mountain and then just scoot back down.
Right.
Like tying my shoes.
Right. Well, you're in good company. Someone should have told Bach that. Have you ever tried to read those handwritten? I mean, oh my gosh.
No.
Yeah, his handwriting was terrible. Beethoven's too, terrible handwriting. I don't know how any of these people got this stuff actually played, but there you go.
Oh man, my handwriting's really good. What does that mean?
I don't know.
These geniuses with their messy
you could probably
offices.
handwrite scores and have people write them. You
Yeah,
probably
right.
wouldn't need to hire a copyist like those guys did.
Oh, well, my notation's garbage, but my handwriting's actually, my signature's pretty good. I mean, I've had 45 years to work on that thing.
Well, there you go. Are you relieved? You feel more creative now?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Good. All right. Well, on that note,
I mean, there's too much to recap. It would be just listening to the whole episode.
It would just be
again.
decapoing this episode.
But we discussed the clefs. We talked about the treble clef, which is also known as the G clef.
Right.
The little circle circles the G.
Right.
We talked about the mnemonic devices that go along with that.
Yep.
Bass clef, the F clef.
Yep, all of that stuff. We
Little
talked
thing
about
circles the F.
rhythms and note lengths and
Note lengths and how to divide them and
yeah,
tempos.
and a few miscellaneous score stuff. You should be well ready to start reading scores now.
I think that was the best recap we've ever done.
I think it was too.
All right, y'all. Thanks for listening.
See you next time. This is our coda.
This is our coda.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back soon. Have a good one.
Peace, love, and music.
Okay, you know what all the signs and symbols mean. Now get out there and read some music. You can support us at patreon.com/musicstudent101. You can find our merchandise by searching for Music Student 101 at redbubble.com. And for questions or comments, you You can reach us at info@musicstudent101.com.